In this training video, you'll learn the main parts of your boat, sails and rigging, how to recognise them and what they're called. You'll learn where to sit and how to hold the tiller. We'll also show you the most common type of knots used in sailing and how to tie them and where they're typically used. Boats come in all different shapes, sizes and construction. They can be made from wood, fiberglass or durable plastic, so depending on what type of sailing you plan to do, there's a boat for you. It's best to avoid dashing out and buying the first one you see. It's better to try as many different boats as possible to ensure that you buy the best one for your needs. Sailing centres offer great purchasing advice. Sailing clubs are also a good place to start looking, and some even offer boats for hire. There are many different combinations of sail, fixtures and fittings. The basic principles are all the same, but from boat to boat, small differences will apply depending on your particular setup. Every boat, however, does have the same basic components. These are the hull, the mast, which is generally made of aluminium, the boom, which connects to the mast, the sails and the rudder assembly. The front of the hull is called the bow, and the rear, stern or transom. To help with manoeuvring ashore, a launching trolley should be used. These have large soft wheels and are designed to go in the water and make launching easier. A seat that runs sideways across the boat is called a thwart. The bit you sit on is called the side tanks, and the outside edge of the boat is called the gunwale. The mast is either self-supporting like this laser or supported by a series of wire rigging. The side rigging is called shrouds, and the front wire is called a forestay. You may have spreaders fitted to your boat. These horizontal brackets help to spread the load of the rig to the mast. The kicking strap is either permanently fitted to the boom like this, or clips under the boom. This control stops the boom from rising and makes the sail control easier while you're sailing. The boom connects to the mast with a flexible joint called a gooseneck. The gooseneck is either slid into a hole on the boom like this, or in some situations left permanently fixed. The rope used to tie the boat to the trolley and help during the manoeuvring process is called the painter. The painter is also used to tie the boat to the pontoon during rigging. You'll have a mainsail, and in the case of a two-hander, a jib at the front of the boat. You may also have a spinnaker, which can only be used when sailing with the wind behind you. The sails are pulled in and out with ropes, which are called sheets. You'll have a main sheet to control the mainsail. In a two-hander, you'll have a jib sheet to control the jib. You may also have a spinnaker sheet to control the spinnaker. The configuration of the main sheet between the boom and the hull is called the main sheet falls. To hoist the sails, you'll have a rope or wire running through the mast. These are called halyards. These are simply connected to the top of the sail and then pulled to hoist. Your boat may also be fitted with a furling system for the jib. The sail is unrolled by pulling on the jib sheet and rolled up by pulling on the furling line. The spinnaker is controlled by the crew, launched from a chute and supported with a retractable bowsprit. To help control the ropes, they can run through fixtures on the hull called fairleads. To hold the ropes easily in place for quick adjustment, you should use jam cleats. These come in different configurations. Sails have three corners, called the head, the tack, and the clew. The leading edge of the sail is called the luff. The trailing edge is called the leech, and the bottom edge is called the foot. The foot of the mainsail is pulled out along the boom using the clew outhaul. To stop the leech of the sail from flapping as you sail along, sail battens are inserted into pockets along the leech. Telltales are small strips, generally made from wool, fitted towards the front edge or luff of the sail. These are there to help you when sail setting. You may also have a flag at the top of your mast. This is called a burgee and it points towards the wind. This will help your wind awareness as you sail along. In the middle of the boat, you'll have a centerboard, which either pivots around a pin like this, or slides up and down like this, which is called a daggerboard. Your boat should have at least 2 buoyancy tanks to keep you afloat. They're designed so that should one become holed, the boat will still float. The buoyancy tanks form the main body of the hull that you sit on, with an additional tank at the bow of the boat. Drainage holes are fitted at the back of the boat to allow you to drain any water that may collect in the buoyancy tank while sailing. These holes are secured with bungs, which must be fitted before you go afloat. The boat will not sink if you do not fit the bungs, but it will fill with water and be very difficult to steer if you don't. To steer, you'll have a rudder, which is fixed to the back of the boat and controlled by a horizontal pole which is called the tiller. The final part of the assembly is the tiller extension, which is the bit that you hold. The rudder blade pivots around a pin, which allows it to be easily raised and lowered, and once down, is secured in place with a piece of rope held in a jam cleat on the tiller. The person steering is called the helmsman, but when we use this term it applies to both male or female. This person steers the boat by holding the tiller extension across and in front of their body with one hand and the main sheet in the other hand. This is called the dagger grip. This grip allows you to control the mainsail and rudder easily. In a two-hander, the second person is called the crew. This person controls the jib and, if fitted, the spinnaker. To help you lean out and balance the boat, hook your feet underneath the tow straps. The left-hand side of the boat is called the port side, and the right-hand side, the starboard side. In front of the boat is called a head, and behind the boat is called a stern. The side of the boat under the boom is called the leeward side, and the side of the boat opposite the boom is called the windward side. As you change tack or jibe, the windward and leeward descriptions change sides as well. All the other descriptions remain as they were. Boat and wind speeds are measured in knots, and 1 knot is 1.85 kilometers per hour. Understanding what all the parts of your boat are called will help you understand better the other sailorboat training videos. Now, let's look at knots. Good knots are important because they don't undo themselves, and you'll always be able to untie it after use, even when the rope is wet and been under load. One of the easiest knots to tie is called the figure of 8. This is sometimes called a stopper knot because it can be used to stop a rope from pulling free from a fair lead or jam cleat. Start with the rope in one hand like this. Bend the top back and pass it underneath the main part of the rope like this. Pass the tail back across the top of the main part of the rope. Pass the tail up through the top loop like this from beneath. Finally, grab the tail and pull tight. Let's have another look. With the rope in one hand, grab the tail and pass it behind the main stem of the rope. Loop it back over the top and underneath and back up through the loop at the top. Pull the tail tight. Next, the reef knot or square knot. This is a general purpose knot used to join 2 pieces of rope together. Holding both ends, pass the left-hand piece of rope over the top of the right-hand piece and back under. Pull a bit of slack through. Bend both tails so they point together, passing the right-hand piece of rope over the left-hand piece and back under. Pull both tails tight. Let's have another look. Holding both ends, pass the left hand over the top of the right hand and back around underneath. Bend both tails together. Pass the right hand over the left hand and back underneath and through the loop. Pull tight. The round turn and 2/2 hitches is a knot that's used to tie a single piece of rope to a fixed object. This is particularly useful when tying a boat to a cleat on a pontoon or its trolley. Loop the tail of the rope underneath the fixed object and wrap it completely around one complete turn. Continue passing the tail back around until it points back towards you. Next, take the tail and pass it underneath the main part of the rope and loop it back around, poking it through the loop that's just been created. And pull tight. Repeat this a second time, taking the tail back underneath the main part of the rope and poke it back through the loop you've created. And pull tight. Let's have another look. Pass the tail under the fixed object and loop it completely around. Continue looping until it points back towards you. Pass the tail underneath the main body of the rope and poke the tail back through the loop that you've created. Pull tight. Repeat it once more, tail behind the main rope. Bend it back around and poke the tail through the loop and pull tight. An alternative when using a cleat on a pontoon is to make a series of loops in a figure of 8, like this. Do this several times, finishing off with a full turn. The last knot we'll look at is the bowline, which is the knot that most people have difficulty in learning. The bowline knot is used to create a fixed single loop in the end of a line. It's very strong under load and can be used in many places on the boat. To start with, make a small loop by placing one hand on top of the other hand like this, leaving plenty of tail to create the end fixed loop. Take the tail and poke it up from the bottom of the small loop that you've just created. Pass this tail underneath and back around the main part of the rope. Poke the tail back down through the small loop, this time from the top. Holding the tail and part of the fixed loop in one hand, pull the main part of the rope tight with the other hand. Let's have another look. Make the loop. Pass the tail from underneath. Back around and behind the main part of the rope. Loop it back across and down from the top. Hold part of the tail with the fixed loop in one hand. Pull the rest of the rope tight. You should practice all of these knots until you can tie them quickly and easily. You can even try learning to tie them with your eyes closed. Welcome to Sailor Boat. This DVD is one of a collection of 3 DVDs. This disc covers an introduction to sailing and takes you through all the fundamentals you need to know to help you understand the basic principles of sailing. The other 2 discs in the series look specifically at sailing a single-handed dinghy and a two-handed dinghy. Each disc is easy to navigate and is broken into short modules which demonstrate the basic maneuvers you need in order to sail your boat, which should then be practiced afloat. The Sailor Boat DVDs perfectly complement a training course you may be attending, or can act as a refresher after a course. Perhaps you may be going on your first sailing holiday, or simply want to brush up on your skills. By following what we show you, you'll have a better understanding of how a boat works and how to sail it. Each module has been written by a senior dinghy instructor and combines the use of clear 2D and 3D graphics, slow motion and freeze frame, as well as the use of unique film from an onboard camera. All of these make our DVDs easy to watch and understand. Explore the disc and enjoy it. In this training video, you'll learn about your sailing environment, safety afloat, and basic rules. You'll learn what to look for in a sailing area, what conditions and areas to avoid, and how to gather weather and tide information. You'll see what clothing to wear, as well as how to be towed by a safety boat. We'll also give you simple rules explanations. You'll see graphical representations of simple situations, and we'll explain which is the give-way vessel. Firstly, always wear a buoyancy aid or life jacket if you're either on or near the water, and you should never sail alone. You must understand your ability level and respect the elements. Do not sail if the wind is strong until you've learned the basics on fair weather days. There's a recognized wind measurement scale. This is called the Beaufort scale. The blocks in the middle indicate the wind force strengths. You should limit your sailing to winds up to force 3 or 4. As your experience grows, you'll be able to cope with stronger winds. These flag shots indicate fair weather winds, and the water looks like this. This is an ideal wind condition to learn in. This flag indicates very rough weather, and you can see the flag is flapping violently, and this is what the water looked like on the same day. If faced with this situation, you must not go afloat. Do not sail in a thunderstorm. The mast is an excellent lightning conductor. If one arrives when you're afloat, you must return to shore. Before you go afloat, you must obtain a good weather forecast for your area, and if on the sea, the times of the next high water. Information on both these points is generally available online, in local media, or even on a mobile phone application. Tide times are important to understand. The direction and speed the current flows varies depending on the time of high water and can exceed your boat speed, sweeping you out to sea if the wind drops. Tidal currents get particularly strong at harbour entrances and headlands, so avoid sailing in these areas. We assume that your boat is in a seaworthy condition and watertight. If you're in doubt, you must get the boat checked by a professional. It's a good idea to carry a paddle on board, which you can use if the wind drops, a long piece of rope to be used if you need to be towed. You should carry a sponge and a bailer, and a small anchor like this is a good idea, as it'll help to hold the boat in position if the wind drops. Make sure that any loose items are tied on, so that you don't lose them if you capsize. Your boat should have at least 2 buoyancy tanks to keep you afloat. They're designed so that should one become holed, the boat will still float. The buoyancy tanks form the main body of the hull that you sit on, with an additional tank at the bow of the boat. Drainage holes are fitted at the back of the boat to allow you to drain any water that may collect in the buoyancy tanks while sailing. These holes are secured with bungs, which must be fitted before you go afloat. The boat won't sink if you don't fit the bungs, but it will fill with water and be very difficult to steer if you don't. You should never sail alone. Only sail in an area where somebody could come and assist you in the event of you getting into difficulties. A deserted and quiet beach may look an inviting area to learn in peace and quiet, but there's probably a good reason as to why no other boats are there. Strong tides and currents may exist, hazardous shipping may operate, unexposed rocks and sandbanks may also be a problem. You must choose a location where other boats are sailing. Sailing clubs are the perfect choice. What you wear is also very important. You must wear clothing to suit the climate in your particular situation, whether this be hot or cold. You must always wear a personal buoyancy aid or life jacket at all times when in the boat or near the water. A buoyancy aid is generally accepted as the most suitable for dinghy sailing, as these jackets allow easy body movement and will keep you afloat. However, because of the design, you'll not float face up if you're knocked unconscious. A life jacket is the alternative, but these are cumbersome to wear aboard a dinghy. You must wear your buoyancy aid tightly so that you do not fall out of it when you fall in the water. And it's important to wear it as the outermost garment to allow somebody to grab hold of it easily to help pull you back aboard after a capsize. Some people opt to wear safety helmets to protect them from bangs, usually from the boom. Ropes can burn your hands if you let them slide through your fingers. Gloves are therefore a good idea. If it's cold, you should wear a hat. We recommend that you use footwear with non-slip soles. Clothing made from man-made fibers are ideally suited for sailing, as these types of fabrics still offer warmth when wet and they dry quickly. You should avoid cotton or wool-based clothing like jeans or heavy wool sweaters, as these are heavy and uncomfortable to wear when they're wet and take a long time to dry. To help keep you warm, waterproof tops are a good idea to keep the wind off. Waterproof trousers keep the wind and spray off your legs while sailing and also help to keep you warm. However, if there is the likelihood of a capsize, wetsuits are a good idea, especially if the weather is cool. Be careful of the sun's rays. The ultraviolet light will reflect off the surface of the water and the wind will cool exposed skin. This will mask the burning feeling. Be particularly careful on days when the sun is hazy. It will still burn you. Apply sun cream to exposed areas and also take it afloat with you. You should also take something to drink. If you need to attract the safety boat's attention, make large arm movements like this. If you need to be towed ashore, the safety boat crew will instruct you on what to do, but with the sails lowered, the crew should take the tow rope from the safety boat and wrap it completely around the mast like this and hold it tight. Do not tie this off. Raise the centerboard. The safety crew will then secure the tow rope. As the slack in the tow rope is taken up, the helmsman then steers to follow the safety boat. Near the shore, let go of the tow rope and use your paddle for the last little bit. If you need to be towed while sailing a single-hander, wrap the tow rope completely around the mast and hold it in one hand and steer the boat with the other. Remove or fully raise the centerboard. If one person falls overboard in a two-hander, immediately the man goes overboard, the other person checks their position and takes control of the helm. Tack around and sail below the man overboard and approach on a close reach. Let the sails flap to control your speed, stopping by the man overboard. Help them aboard and sail away. Now let's look at rules. Rules are there for everyone's safety. We'll show you the basic rules you need to be aware of, but you need to be aware that these rules are only a small part of a lengthy international publication called International Regulations for Prevention of Collisions at Sea, and includes rules for heavy commercial shipping. As a dinghy sailor, you need to only be aware of the most basic rules, but if you plan to race, further rules will also apply, which are beyond the scope of this video. When afloat, the priority of all vessels is to avoid a collision and any incident, so you must keep a good lookout at all times whilst sailing and be prepared to take avoiding action in good time. Don't forget to look under the boom as well as behind your back, as boats can come at you from any angle. Be aware that the wind may restrict your ability to hear the sounds of approaching vessels, and sailing boats in particular can be hard to hear. In most situations, sail has priority over power boats, and they should keep out of your way. But you must keep out of the way of large commercial shipping or fishing vessels. They are often constrained by their draft or their maneuverability. You must also keep out of the way of any man-powered vessels like rowing boats. Any point of sailing where the wind is on the left-hand side of the boat is called port tack and is the give-way tack and is marked in red. Any point of sailing where the wind is on the right-hand side of the boat is called starboard tack, which is the stand-on tack marked in green. You must familiarize yourself with what point of sailing and what tack you're on at all times, as this has a direct bearing on whether you are the give-way vessel or not. If you're the boat on starboard, you can alert your position to oncoming traffic by shouting loudly, "Starboard!" But you must be prepared to take avoiding action if the boat on port does not respond. Let's take a look at some practical examples. Here, both boats are on close haul point of sailing. The boat in red is on port tack and is the give-way vessel. The green boat is on starboard and is the stand-on vessel. The red boat must avoid the green boat by either steering behind the starboard boat or tacking onto starboard tack to match the green boat and sail alongside it. The same rule applies if you're sailing with the wind behind you. Once again, the boat in red is on port, so should avoid the boat in green, which is sailing on starboard. The red boat has the choice of turning behind the green boat or jibing onto starboard to sail alongside the green boat. Let's now look at when a close-hauled boat meets a boat sailing away from the wind. The red boat is close-hauled but sailing on port, so should avoid the green boat that is on a dead run on starboard. As before, the red boat must keep out of the way by either tacking out of the way like this or turning to steer behind the green boat. Let's look at this in reverse. Here, it's the boat that's sailing away from the wind that is on port tack, marked in red, and the other boat sailing close-hauled is on starboard. Once again, the red boat must avoid the green boat by either steering behind it or turning onto the opposite jibe to sail clear. Here we see two boats sailing on port. In this situation, it's the boat that has the wind behind it sailing down the screen that's the give-way vessel, so must take avoiding action, and steers behind the close-hauled boat to keep clear. Now, let's look at what happens when overtaking. Here, the overtaking boat must keep clear at all times by either sailing well to the windward side or by turning underneath and sailing well to the leeward side. Let's look at boats on converging courses. In this situation, it's the boat that's on the windward side that's the give-way vessel and must adjust its course to avoid a collision, or steer behind the other vessel. The rules we've just illustrated are the most common and most basic. Please be aware that other situations do exist, and if in doubt, keep clear of other vessels to avoid collisions well in advance. Key learning points. Understand your level of ability. Respect the elements. Always wear a personal buoyancy aid. Never sail alone. Understand the tide times and weather forecast. Make sure your boat is seaworthy. Wear clothing to suit your particular environment. The wind can mask the power of the sun's rays. You should use sun cream to protect exposed skin areas. Rules are there for everyone's safety. You must know what tack you're on to understand who is the give-way vessel in any particular situation. In general, the boat on port tack is the give-way vessel and must take avoiding action. You must keep a good lookout at all times and be prepared to take immediate avoiding action, even if you appear to be in the right. Next steps. Watch this video as many times as is necessary to get a good understanding of what to be aware of with your sailing environment and rules afloat. Use the script and glossary to support your understanding. Familiarize yourself with websites that will give you information about the weather and tides in the area that you may sail in, so that you get used to reading and interpreting the information in different conditions from day to day. Practice being able to read the wind strength by fluttering flags and ripples on the water. And understand the basic rules of the road and avoid collisions. In this training video, we'll show you how to rig your boat. We'll show you the key areas involved in rigging the sails and how to get your boat ready to launch. You'll also see some differences in rigging styles that apply from boat to boat. The second half of the video will show you the steps necessary to reef the sails and allow you to sail in stronger winds. In this video, we mention a lot of technical terms. If you're unfamiliar with these, you may like to watch the Know Your Boat training video first for an explanation. Some boats have the mast inserted into a pocket on the mainsail. Some sails are hoisted up the mast using a halyard. Some sails are loose fitted to the boom. And some are close fixed to the boom. But fundamentally, the rigging process is the same. Let's now look at a two-hander, starting with the jib. The head of the jib connects to the jib halyard with a shackle and split ring. The tack of the jib connects to a fitting on the deck, again with a shackle. The jib halyard is pulled to hoist the sail. The jib halyard tail is connected to the tension system and pulled tight. This tensions the wire rigging. Check the shrouds are tight by giving them a pluck like this. To stop the sail from flapping, pull on the furling line to roll up the sail. Let's now look at the mainsail. Untie the halyard and check above to check that it's not tangled in the rigging. Connect the halyard to the head of the sail. Here, we're looping the halyard back over its plastic stopper to lock it in place. If you're hoisting the sail on land, make sure the nose of the boat is pointing towards the wind. Place the top of the sail in the mast track and pull on the halyard. It works well if one person pulls and one person feeds the sail into the track. Continue pulling until the mainsail is fully hoisted. Some people fit buoyancy bags to the halyard, which help prevent the boat from inverting in the event of a capsize. To keep the sail at the top of the mast, lock the halyard, tidy up the rest of the halyard and store it safely. Some sails have an extra restraining strap near the tack of the sail. Loop it around the mast and secure it. Next, fix the tack of the sail. This is controlled with a downhaul. Loop the downhaul through the eyelet on the sail and secure it back to the boom, and then pull it tight. Next, rig the clew of the sail. Here we see the corner of the sail inserted into a track on top of the boom and pulled out tight. The outhaul rope is then threaded through the eyelet and back to the end of the boom and secured. At the mast end of the boom, the sail outhaul is then pulled tight. If your boat doesn't have a track on top of the boom, the clew will ride up like this. To hold the clew in place, tie it to the boom. Here, we're using a reef knot. The main sheet is then simply threaded between the blocks on the boom and on the boat, ending up with the main sheet jam cleat, where a stopper knot is tied in the end to stop it running free. Some single-handers don't have wire rigging to support the mast. On these boats, the sail has a permanent pocket in which the mast is rigged. The whole unit is then lifted and inserted into the deck of the boat. These sails don't have a track along the boom to hold the foot of the sail in place. The clew end of the sail is then connected to the outhaul on the boom. It's important to tie the clew down like this, as it helps to keep the sail more controllable. Another system will have the foot of the mainsail sliding along a track on top of the boom, and the clew outhaul connects to the sail with a shackle. You may also have a wire halyard. In this situation, the shackle is fitted to the top part of the mainsail, and when the sail is hoisted, the end of the halyard fits over a rack at the bottom of the mast. In this configuration, the boom connects to the mast via a gooseneck, and the tack of the sail is permanently fixed to the end of the boom. In this situation, the downhaul is called the Cunningham, and it works in the same way. Poke the control line through the hole in the sail and tie it back to the end of the boom with a bowline. If your kicking strap is not permanently fixed to the boom, you'll have to connect it. If you have a lifting rudder, Put it in place with the blade raised and make sure the safety clip is fitted. This prevents the rudder from falling off in the event of a capsize. Reefing allows you to reduce the sail area of your boat. This will allow you to keep in control on windy days. It's best to reef ashore, and if in doubt, put a reef in. You'll have a number of reefing points that allow increasing amounts of reefing to be applied to the sail. In this example, we're starting with the mainsail fully rigged and hoisted. First, release the reefing line from the boom and pull all the slack through. Thread the end of this line through the first reefing point behind the mast, and on the other side of the sail, return the line to the boom, but keeping inside the kicking strap. Tie the end of this line to the boom with a bowline. Next, go to the end of the boom and pull the remainder of the reefing line out like this. Return to the mast and release the main halyard to lower the mainsail. Then return to the end of the boom and thread the reefing line through the eyelet of the clew of the sail, like this. And return the line to the boom and clip it in place. Return to the mast and pull the reefing line tight. This pulls the clew down to the boom and tensions the front of the sail. You may need to adjust the halyard slightly to ensure that the reefing point ends up tight to the boom. Tidy up the slack on the reefing line to stop it getting tangled. And finally, tie the sail to the boom using a reef knot. Repeating as necessary. Repeat the process to subsequent reefing points if it's particularly windy. You can reef the sail when the boat is tied to a pontoon, and you should familiarise yourself with the whole process so that you can reef afloat should the need arise. Let's look at another example. The reefing line is released from the boom and threaded through the first reefing point in the sail behind the mast, and then led back to the boom and tied with a bowline. The main halyard is then released to lower the sail. The outhaul end of the reefing line is then threaded through the clew of the sail and led back to the end of the boom and clipped in place. The reefing line is then pulled tight to tension the sail, with the main halyard being adjusted so the first reefing point ends up by the boom. Continue to pull the reefing line to make sure there's no slack. For single-handed boats that don't have wire rigging to support the mast, reefing is simple. Disconnect the outhaul from the clew end of the sail and simply wrap the sail completely around the mast. You can do this several times if necessary. Finally, reconnect the outhaul back to the boom. Whichever reefing procedure you've used, to take the reef out, you should reverse the process. To lower the sails, release the halyards and gently pull down. To pack the sails away, it's best to roll them from the head of the sail. For the mainsail, 2 people make this easier. For the jib, roll the sail up using the wire. Starting at the head, continue winding around until you reach the end. Then finally slide the sails into the sail bag to store them away. If you take all the battens out of the sail after use, you can fold the sail like this. With a friend, fold the sail working towards the head. And then finally, roll the folded sail up. Being completely familiar with the rigging and reefing process is an important part of sailing. In time, you'll get quicker at the whole process. This training video will help you to understand the different points of sailing that a sailing boat can achieve and the dynamics of the wind on your boat. In short, what makes your boat move forwards. Sails do not work if you point the boat straight at the wind. They simply flap. The sail will only work if it sits at an angle of more than 45 degrees to where the wind is blowing from. The area where sails don't work is called the no-go zone. You can sail in any other direction apart from this zone. Any point of sailing where the boat has the wind on its left is called port tack, and any point of sailing where the wind is coming from the right-hand side is called starboard tack. It's very important to have an understanding of where the wind is blowing from, and it's fundamental to everything that you'll do in the boat. To help you, you can use a masthead burgee, which will point towards the wind. Flags ashore are another indicator. Ripples on the water also blow from where the wind is coming from. A flapping sail works like a flag and will lie in the same direction that the wind is blowing from. It's useful to understand how a sail works. If you sail with the wind behind you, it's easy to see what happens. The wind simply pushes you forwards. But how does a boat sail across or towards the wind, like this? Here we see a cross-section of a mainsail. The aerodynamics of a sail work in a similar way to an aircraft wing. The air travelling across the outside edge generates lift, which will blow the boat sideways. By pushing down the centreboard to suit the point of sailing, the sideways slip is reduced and the boat drives forwards through the water. The closest angle you can sail to the wind is on the edge of the no-go zone. This point of sailing is called close-hauled. You should have the sails pulled in tight with the centreboard pushed fully down to prevent side slipping, and by probing with the tiller to find the point where the sails just start to flap, you're on the edge of the no-go zone. Close-hauled is the point of sailing you should use if you want to sail towards the wind. Changing sides is called tacking. Sailing on subsequent close-hauled angles, tacking between them, you'll eventually end up at your upwind destination. Together, a series of tacks is called beating. The next point of sailing is called a close reach. To arrive here from a close-hauled position, simply pull the tiller away from the boom for a short while, raise the centreboard slightly and release the sails to find the point where they just start to flap, and then pull them back in so they stop flapping. Turning slightly away from a close reach, you arrive at a beam reach point of sailing. Here, you'll be sailing at 90 degrees to the wind. A beam reach is the best point of sailing for your first sail, as the sails and the boat are easily controlled. Adjust the sails as before, and you should also raise the centreboard here so it's about halfway up. Turning slightly away from a beam reach, you arrive at a broad reach point of sailing. Here, you'll be sailing at 120 degrees to the wind. And raise the centreboard so it's about 2/3 up, and let the sails out slightly as before. The next point of sailing is called a training run. To arrive here, turn the boat about 20 degrees away from the broad reach position, and you'll be pointing almost directly away from the wind. Release the mainsail so the boom is almost at 90 degrees to the boat, and the centreboard should be about 3/4 of the way up. This is the best point of sailing if you want to sail with the wind behind you, as there's less of a risk of the boom accidentally flipping across, which is called jibing. The final point of sailing is a dead run. This is when the boat is pointing directly away from the wind. As you learn, this point of sailing is probably best avoided until your wind awareness has developed. It's very easy for the wind to suddenly catch the wrong side of the sail, which can cause the boom to flick across the boat very fast and capsize you. Turning back towards the wind, you can get back to any of the points of sailing by pushing the tiller gently towards the boom, pulling in the sails a little more to stop them flapping, and pushing the centreboard down, until you're on the close-hauled point of sailing once more. Key learning points. The no-go zone is an area about 45 degrees either side of where the wind is blowing from, and the boat will have no forward drive in this zone. Close hauled is on the edge of the no-go zone. Sails are pulled in fully and the centreboard is pushed fully down. Close reach. Turn 20 degrees away from the close hauled point of sailing. Sails set so they just stop flapping. Raise the centreboard a quarter of the way up. Beam reach is about 90 degrees to the wind. Release the boom so it's approximately 45 degrees over the side of the boat so the sails don't flap. Centreboard should be halfway up. Broad reach is about 120 degrees to the wind, and sails set so they're just not flapping. Centreboard is about 2/3 up. A training run is a further 30 degrees away from a broad reach. Boom is almost 90 degrees to the boat, and centreboard is 3/4 of the way up. Dead run is sailing directly away from the wind. Boom is 90 degrees to the boat, centreboard stays at 3/4 up. You must understand and establish where the wind is blowing from and adjust your sails and centreboard to suit each point of sailing. Next steps. Watch this video as many times as is necessary to get an understanding of the points of sailing and how to recognize them, and what to do with the sails and centreboard on each point. Use the script and glossary to help you. Then on the water, try to get a good understanding of the wind direction at all times to establish what point of sailing you should be using. A sailing dinghy will sail best if we pay attention to 6 simple essentials. In this training video, we'll show you what these are and what they mean to you as you sail along. You should first be familiar with the points of sailing that a dinghy can achieve, as these are directly linked to the 6 essentials. A good understanding of these 6 essentials will form the foundation of all your learning development, and in time, they'll become second nature. You should keep thinking about them at all times, and as one changes, there's a knock-on effect on the others. The essentials apply to all sailing craft, whether they're single-handed or two-handed. Bad habits are easily formed when you learn, so you should learn the best way to sail from the start. Briefly, the 6 essentials are wind awareness, sail setting, boat balance, boat trim, course sailed, and centreboard position. They're all equally important, so you must pay attention to all 6 as you go along to ensure effective sailing. So let's start with wind awareness. This is the only essential that is outside of the boat. Having an understanding of where the wind is blowing from is an essential skill to learn and forms the basis of everything that happens aboard. The wind is reasonably constant, but as your boat changes direction, you must always have a feel for what this means to the angle the wind is hitting your boat. To help you, you can use a masthead burgee, which will point towards the wind. Flags ashore are another indicator. Ripples on the water also blow from where the wind is coming from. A flapping sail works like a flag and will lie in the same direction that the wind is blowing. You will not be able to point your boat directly into the wind, as the sails don't work if you do. The sails only start to work if you remain outside a zone which is at 45 degrees either side of where the wind is blowing from. This zone is called the no-go zone, and you should keep out of this zone to keep sailing effectively. Familiarize yourself with where the no-go zone is by looking at where the wind is blowing from, and judge 45 degrees either side. In addition to the wind direction, its strength is also important. You should keep a lookout for any stronger gusts of wind coming. These often appear as darker patches of water, so you must keep an eye out for these and be prepared. Now, let's look at sail setting. Sails are your engine, accelerator and brake all in one, so having them incorrectly set is a bit like driving a car with an engine that's badly tuned. Your main control ropes are called sheets, and adjusting these control sheets in or out adjusts the sail setting. You must constantly check and adjust your sails to keep them at the best angle relative to the wind. This is when the sail is not flapping at any point. In the case of a two-hander, you should release both sails until they start to flap. When you see this, pull them both back in a little until they stop flapping. This is the optimum position for the sails on that particular course. In the case of a single-hander, simply look for the front part of the mainsail to stop flapping. As you alter your course, you must repeat this exercise constantly to maintain a good and even airflow across the sail. When you want to sail towards the wind, turn your boat onto the close hauled position and find the edge of the no-go zone. Pull the control sheet so the boom is close to the center line of the boat, and pull the jib in hard if you're sailing a two-hander. When close hauled, you steer the boat to find the point where the sail starts to flap. Push the tiller slowly and gently towards the boom until the sail flaps, and then pull it away from the boom until it stops flapping. So, keep the tiller movements small and keep probing the edge of the no-go zone in small amounts until you're confident that you're on the edge of the no-go zone. If sailing a single-hander, steer the boat to find the point where the front part of the mainsail just stops flapping. To help you here, you might have telltales. These are small strips, normally made of wool, and stuck to both sides of the sail, normally about 6 inches inside the front edge. You should aim to keep the telltales streaming evenly on both sides of the sail like this. As you enter the no-go zone, the telltale on your side of the sail will lift like this, and as you turn away from the wind too far, the outside telltale will flap. When you're close hauled or beating, this is the most likely sailing angle where you might become overpowered. With the sails pulled in closer to the center line of the boat, there's a large sideways force which will try to tip the boat over. To counter this, when the gust hits, ease the main sheet a little. This will reduce the amount of power in the sail, which will reduce the tipping effect of the breeze. Let's look at the sail settings on 2 of the other points of sailing. These are beam reaching and a training run. On a beam reach, the boom should be at about 45 degrees to the side of the boat. And on a training run, it should almost be fully out. Keep looking out for the flapping point of the sail. Let the sail out until it starts to flap, and then pull it in slightly. There are a couple of other sail controls that you need to be aware of. The mainsail outhaul is the control that pulls the foot of the mainsail out along the boom and alters the amount of curve in the lower part of the sail. The best position for this control is to pull the outhaul tight so it looks like the picture on the left-hand side of the frame. Another sail control is the kicking strap. The kicking strap can be configured to look like this or like this. The kicking strap function is to stop the boom from rising when the main sheet is released. This shot shows the kicking strap correctly tensioned. This shot shows the boom where the kicking strap is too loose. If your sail looks like this, the boat will be hard to control. Another sail control is the Cunningham or downhaul. This is a small piece of rope that loops through a reinforced hole about 4 inches above the boom at the mast end and ties back to the boom. And when tensioned, it creates a fold in the sailcloth just above the boom behind the mast. At this stage in your development, all you need to know is that the stronger the wind is, the more you pull it. Now, let's look at balance. You should be aiming to keep the boat flat at all times. This is easy to say, but hard to achieve. Fundamentally, sailboats sail best when they're flat in the water. When the boat is flat, the waterline shape is symmetrical. When the boat leans over, this shape becomes distorted. The result is that the boat will want to turn towards the wind. To keep sailing straight, you'll need to use the rudder, which creates drag and will slow you down. To help balance the boat, you can lean out using the tow straps to take your weight. If you're sailing a two-handed boat, try to work as a team, but be sure to use the tow straps. You should also be ready to release the main sheet slightly when you become overpowered by a gust of wind. By releasing the sail slightly, the front edge of the sail will flap, which reduces the power in the sail and helps you to balance the boat. The wind has a habit of wavering in direction and altering in strength as gusts of wind come and go. You must constantly move your weight in and out to balance the boat, which is great exercise. The next essential is boat trim. In simple terms, trim is the amount of fore and aft tilt on the boat. A common mistake when learning is to sit too far back in the boat and hold the tiller and not the tiller extension. You should practice using the tiller extension at all times, which also encourages you to sit forwards. If you sit too far back, the back of the boat, which is called the transom, goes below the water, which upsets the underwater shape of the boat and increases the amount of drag, which slows you down. The exception to this is when you're more advanced and sailing perhaps with a spinnaker. In this situation, the power of the wind lifts the nose of the boat clear of the water, leaving just the rear section of the boat in contact with the water. This is called planing and is sailing at its fastest. And to promote planing, you should move your weight back a little. The next factor is course. You need to aim to sail on the best or shortest course possible for your intended destination. It's very easy to get distracted and disorientated when sailing and not pay correct attention to where you're actually trying to sail to. Keep looking out of the boat to check you're still sailing to where you need to get to. Pick a landmark on the shore as your reference and adjust your steering to maintain a course to that point. The final essential is the amount of centerboard that you use. The centerboard is a large plate located in the middle of the boat that can either be slid up or down like this, or it pivots around a pin. The purpose of the centerboard is to stop the boat slipping sideways. Try for yourself to sail on a close hauled position with the sails pulled in and the centerboard fully down, and then lift the centerboard and see the effect. When close hauled, most of the energy from the wind will try to blow you sideways. As you turn away from the wind, this force moves more to push you forwards rather than sideways. This affects the amount of centerboard you need. Starting close hauled, the centerboard should be fully down. On a beam reach, it should be about halfway up. And on a training run, about 3/4 up. So let's recap the 6 essentials. They are wind awareness, sail setting, boat balance, boat trim, course sailed, and centerboard. They are all related and interlinked. You must have an understanding of the wind awareness to help you identify which point of sailing you're on, and then ensure that all the remaining essentials are in alignment to allow you to optimize your performance and maximize your enjoyment. Key learning points. Wind awareness. Understanding where the wind is blowing from is the basis of all activities afloat. Use burgees, flags, flapping sails, or ripples on the water to tell you where the wind is coming from. Keep an eye on the water for gusts of wind and take appropriate action to prevent capsize by either balancing the boat or sail setting. The wind has a zone in which you can't sail. This is called the no-go zone and is about 45 degrees either side of where the wind is blowing from. Sail setting. If the sails are set too tight or too slack, the boat will slow down. For optimum speed, release the sail until it just starts to flap and then tighten it again until it just stops flapping. Boat balance. For optimum speed, your boat should be flat in the water. Use your weight to balance the boat and be prepared to release the main sheet to keep the boat flat. You may need to move your weight quickly if the wind suddenly gusts or stops suddenly. Boat trim. This is the amount of fore or aft tilt the boat has in the water. Make sure you use the tiller extension to control the rudder. This will ensure you sit in the correct place. Course sailed. Sail the shortest distance for your intended direction. Keep looking out of the boat to check you're still sailing where you need to get to. Centreboard. Starting close hauled, the centreboard should be fully down. On a beam reach, it should be about halfway up. And on a training run, about 3/4 up. Next steps. Watch this video as many times as necessary to get a good understanding of what the 6 essentials are. Use the script or glossary accompanying this video to help you. Practice the 6 essentials. For example, try moving your position in the boat and experiencing the effect it has on your speed and direction. Practice using the tiller extension at all times. Try lowering and raising the centreboard on a close hauled point of sailing to experience the effect this has.
This DVD contains PDF scripts that can easily be accessed through a computer. To access these to either view or print, first place the DVD in the appropriate DVD drive on your computer. Then, left button click on the Start menu in the bottom left-hand corner and go to My Computer. Left button click on My Computer, which will open a new window. Select the drive holding your DVD and right button click. From the menu that appears, then left button click on Explore. In the new window that appears, you should see a PDF document for each video on the DVD. Double-click on the icon of the script you want to read with the left mouse button, and the PDF document will display on your screen. You can now scroll through this as you please and even print a copy if you would like. At the end of each script, you will also find a glossary to cover any technical terms used in the video.